Well, I also had to get Michael's take on NCIS coming back this season without fan favorite Abby. Pauley Perrette, who played Abby for 15 seasons on the crime drama, left the show earlier this year.
NCIS has given us shocking twists, heartbreaking exits, and unforgettable characters. But behind the cameras, the real drama came when some of its biggest stars walked away. Why would anyone leave one of the most successful television shows? The reasons are far from simple. From sudden departures to quiet goodbyes, every story is different. In this video, we'll break down the real reasons why 10 actors left NCIS. One exit in particular caused chaos right before filming even started. Let's dive in. Pauley Perrette, Abby Sciuto. If there was one NCIS character who could light up the lab with her quirky energy, it was Abby Sciuto. The pigtails, the tattoos, the endless calf-pow cups. Abby wasn't just a forensic scientist, she was the show's heartbeat. For 15 years, fans tuned in as she cracked cases with brilliance and charm, often balancing out Gibbs's stoic demeanor with her vibrant personality. So when Pauley Perrette announced her departure before season 16, the NCIS fandom was shaken. How could the series survive without Abby? And more importantly, why would Pauley walk away from a role she had defined for over a decade? The truth behind her exit was far more complicated than anyone expected. At first, Pauley's announcement came without much detail. She simply confirmed she was leaving and thanked the fans for their support. But soon, cryptic tweets started to appear on her feed. Messages hinting at multiple physical assaults and a toxic environment on set. Fans were left puzzled and concerned. What exactly had gone wrong behind the scenes? It wasn't long before speculation pointed toward tensions with her co-star, Harmon. A specific incident became the center of discussion. Harmon's dog had bitten a crew member, sending them to the hospital for 15 stitches. Despite the seriousness of the attack, Harmon continued to bring the dog to set, making many crew members uneasy. As both the star and producer of the show, Harmon wielded enormous influence, and according to reports, people were hesitant to confront him. Pauley, however, wasn't one to stay silent. This decision to speak up reportedly led to a growing rift between her and Harmon. Previously, Perrette tweeted that she lost her job for saying no, raising speculation that she was being targeted and bullied after her safety concerns. Even after a year of separation, she admitted to having nightmares about Harmon, further suggesting the extent of the effect that this conflict had on her. But saying goodbye to Abby wasn't easy. Perrette eventually said that a painful scenario was imagining a world without her beloved character. The episode of Abby's exit was bittersweet, as it was portrayed that the team was alive rather than dead, and written out of the spotlight, instead of being slayed off, leaving a glimmer of hope to fans that maybe one day she could return. For Pauley Perrette, these days may symbolize walking away from NCIS under less than favorable conditions, but they also immortalize in a foreign TV space an Abby Sciuto, the reminder that even the brightest stars sometimes leave under the darkest clouds. Keep your curiosity ready, because the next exit was as sudden as it was quiet. Jennifer Esposito, Alex Quinn. When Jennifer Esposito joined NCIS in season 14, many fans saw her character, Special Agent Alexandra Quinn, as the show's attempt to fill the void left by Michael Weatherly's Tony DiNozzo. Quinn was witty, sharp, and battle-tested, a former training officer who returned to fieldwork after years of shaping recruits. Her dynamic with Gibbs and the rest of the team hinted at long-term potential, and viewers were eager to see how she might grow into the NCIS family. But after just one season, Alex Quinn was gone, written out with little fanfare. Why did such a promising character disappear so suddenly? On screen, The reason was straightforward. Quinn stepped away from NCIS to care for her ailing mother. It was a gentle exit compared to the dramatic deaths that had become an NCIS trademark, but also one that felt abrupt. Many fans scratched their heads. Quinn had been built up as a resilient leader, someone with years of field experience under her belt. Would she really walk away just like that? Naturally, rumors began to swirl. First, there were rumors that Esposito herself had health issues, which could have contributed to her diminished capacity to carry on in that role. The NCIS filming season is known to be really tough. On the one hand, the long hours, the short turnaround times, and on the other, season orders that can stretch to almost 22 episodes per year. However, Esposito was not one to duck from a rumor-spreading contest. She wrote on social media, "No, I'm not ill, but I so appreciate your concern." Rather, she stated that she was aware that NCIS was not supposed to be a long-term position. The character was not written permanently. Alex Quinn was always described as having a limited arc as a one-season character, and not as a long-term role. Esposito had nothing but good things to say about the experience. Her enjoyment of the cast and crew was apparent in everything she said, but she added a very interesting caveat: that in TV, nothing is done with any consistency. The actors come in, do their job to fill the storyline, then exit. In hindsight, Quinn probably has the record for the shortest time as a major NCIS agent, but her impact was far from minor. She injected comic relief, some seriousness, and an outsider's point of view that helped to rattle the status quo for a brief moment. It was not as dramatic as Todd's death or Ziva David's enigmatic disappearance, but it certainly left a void in fans' hearts who wished for just a little more time with Alex Quinn. Indeed, the few months lived by Jennifer Esposito in NCIS illustrated that no matter how allegedly strong one seems in the series, a flip of a coin can send them packing. Sasha Alexander, Todd. When NCIS first launched in 2003, one of its brightest stars was Sasha Alexander, who played Caitlin Todd. A former Secret Service agent with razor-sharp instincts, Kate quickly became a cornerstone of the fledgling team. She had sharp wit, strong principles, and a unique chemistry with Gibbs, Tony, and Abby that helped cement NCIS as more than just another crime procedural. Fans adored her blend of professionalism and warmth, and in many ways, she represented the moral center of the early seasons. That's why her departure in the Season 2 finale remains one of the most shocking moments in NCIS history. After all, Kate wasn't written off quietly. She was slayed in one of the show's most brutal and unforgettable cliffhangers. A sniper's bullet, courtesy of Ari Haswari, ended her story instantly, leaving viewers stunned and devastated. For many, it was their first taste of the show's willingness to make bold, heartbreaking choices. But what really led to this sudden and tragic exit? In fact, Alexander herself had requested her departure. Initially, it seemed hard to believe that an actress could just walk away from a hit show when it was finding its feet. The reason was simple and quite telling: a relentless NCIS schedule. She said in interviews that she somewhat underestimated how physically and emotionally taxing it would be. Shooting 24 episodes a season would mean working 17 hours a day practically year-round. The strain drove her to creator Donald Belisario, where she broke down in tears and told him it was just too much hard work. Belisario later maintained that even if her departure were a breach of contract, it was without malice. The crew sympathized with her situation, realizing the pressure the series put on her. For Sasha, it weighed on her consciousness as a matter of survival, and not about being discontent. She just couldn't keep it up anymore. Of course, Kate's death was nothing short of a bombshell. breaking boundaries and redefining NCIS's style of story. The ghost of losing Kate haunted the whole series and turned the lives of Gibbs, Tony, and the rest of the team towards a darker, much more complex emotional space. It would have opened the gates for Cote de Pablo's Ziva David, who would throw her own sparkle into the agency and win fans effortlessly. Sasha Alexander's run at NCIS could have been short, but it was nothing short of memorable. Her exit from the show was a gut punch to viewers, but it also gave the show the emotional stakes it needed to rise above average crime drama. Even years later, Kate Todd is still one of NCIS's favorite characters. Lauren Holly, director Jenny Shepard. By the time Lauren Holly joined NCIS in Season 3, the series had already begun carving out its identity as one of television's most reliable hits. Her character, director Jenny Shepard, arrived not as a rookie agent, but as Gibbs's new boss. Someone with authority, intelligence, and a complicated romantic history with him. The dynamic between Shepard and Gibbs brought fresh tension and intrigue to the show. Their past gave fans plenty to speculate about, while Jenny's position as NCIS director allowed storylines to expand beyond day-to-day investigations. What started as a limited guest arc soon transformed into something much bigger. Initially, Holly believed her time on the show would be short. She was offered a role that was supposed to last around 6 episodes. Having previously worked with Mark Harmon, she was intrigued by the chance to collaborate again, especially since their characters shared such a layered backstory. But NCIS had other plans. The writers saw potential in Shepard and extended her run dramatically. By the time her tenure ended, Holly had appeared in nearly 50 episodes. The increased amount of time spent in front of the screen and her character being a lead made Holly feel restless. She admitted during interviews that she started feeling bored with the character arc of Jenny after 2 years with NCIS. The fast-paced environment of network television often causes character arcs to be done in haphazard ways, and Holly found it difficult to stay connected with this one. Then came a bitter disappointment when series creator and showrunner Donald Bellisario, who had interested her in the role, left the series. With Bellisario out of the picture, Holly felt like the connection to the material was slowly slipping away. The writers finally decided to give Jenny Shepard one of the more dramatic exits, if not the most dramatic in NCIS history. In Season 5, she was shot during an intense shootout at the diner, thus concluding the arc with a bang. It left the fans wholly shocked, as well as the agent Gibbs, as he was forced to deal with yet another loss of someone close to him. But for Lauren Holly, the end of Shepard's journey was somewhat of a relief. She would later admit that she felt more than a little relieved when they decided to slay her character off. It gave her closure and cut her loose from the grind of NCIS, affording her the time to pursue other projects. Jenny Shepard may not have been around for long in NCIS, but her legacy is still important. She was not just another agent. She was a commanding presence, an equal to Gibbs, and a strong proof that NCIS never shies away from delivering the highest caliber of storytelling in pure drama. Michael Weatherly, Tony DiNozzo. From the very first episode of NCIS, Special Agent Tony DiNozzo was impossible to ignore. Equal parts charming, goofy, and whip-smart, Michael Weatherly infused the character with a charisma that made him both comic relief and emotional anchor. His playful banter with Gibbs, his flirtatious chemistry with Kate, and later Ziva, and his loyalty to his team quickly made him a fan favorite. For over a decade, DiNozzo wasn't just part of NCIS, he was NCIS. Which is why, when Weatherly announced he was leaving after 13 seasons, fans were floored. What could drive away one of the series' biggest stars? The truth was less dramatic than fans feared, but deeply human: burnout. Weatherly himself admitted that the grind of playing DiNozzo for so long had taken its toll. "It really felt like a circle that had gone all the way around," he explained in interviews. "The long hours, the pressure of maintaining consistency across 24-episode seasons, and the sheer weight of being part of such a demanding production left him feeling it was time for a change." But exhaustion was not the only factor. In fact, after 13 long years, Weatherly was just ready to take on a new challenge. Shortly after leaving NCIS, he would accept the leading role on CBS's legal drama Bull, a CBS program inspired by the early career of Dr. Phil McGraw. It allowed him to stretch a bit as an actor without being shadowed by DiNozzo. Luckily, Weatherly's exit was handled sensitively. The writers gave DiNozzo a perfect, tearful farewell rather than slaying him off. In the final episode of Season 13, it was revealed to DiNozzo that he had a young daughter with Ziva, who was earlier thought to be dead. Choosing fatherhood over fieldwork, he left NCIS to raise his daughter in Paris. This was an extremely emotional send-off, befitting the character's progress, yet leaving the door open for a potential return. And Weatherly has never completely ruled it out. From time to time, he likes to bait and tease fans about a possible return to his character, most especially opposite Ziva, portrayed by Cote de Pablo. Pictures with captions like, "They ended up in Paris," had kept the fandom actively guessing. For now, Weatherly has moved on to other ventures. However, the legacy of Tony DiNozzo is evergreen. He was never just comic relief, he was heart, humor, and humanity. Although his departure may have been unavoidable, the fans continue to hope that one day he will come back to NCIS. If you thought DiNozzo's exit was tough, wait until you hear about the next one. Duane Henry, Clayton Reeves. When Duane Henry first appeared on NCIS as MI6 officer Clayton Reeves, he seemed like a breath of fresh air for the long-running series. Introduced in Season 13 and made a series regular the following year, Reeves brought international flair, charm, and a unique backstory that set him apart from his American colleagues. His presence added new layers to the team dynamic, and many fans were eager to see how his character would develop. But just as Reeves was beginning to feel fully integrated, his story came to an abrupt and tragic end. In the Season 15 finale, Reeves was shockingly slain while heroically saving Abby Irioshuto. During a mugging gone wrong, he stepped in front of a gunman's bullet, sacrificing himself to protect one of NCIS's most beloved characters. It was a gut punch for fans who had grown attached to him and a devastating double blow, as it coincided with Perrette's departure from the series. But why was a character with so much potential cut down so early? Behind-the-scenes matters provide the context here. The character of Clayton Reeves was brought into being by showrunner Gary Glassberg, who wished to broaden the perspective of the show through the inclusion of a British agent. Glassberg's untimely death in 2016 left the writers in a quandary regarding the character's future. Without his guiding hand, the character never seemed to settle into a long-term narrative anchor. The decision was made to slay him off, giving a sense of closure for Reeves and an emotional springboard for Abby's goodbye in that dramatic death scene. Duane Henry handled the news gracefully. In interviews, he stated that he understood and even accepted the way Reeves was written out. "I live in a world called You Never Know," said Henry, who described himself as always being prepared for anything to happen in showbiz. He was grateful for the opportunity and very much enjoyed shooting the final moments of his character, calling it the best in TV history. You cannot ask for a better exit. As it happens, many fans were disappointed. They created a wonderful character with humor, depth, and mystery. But instead of having time to unfold all that potential, he just went off too soon. His death has to be one of the most bittersweet arcs that NCIS witnessed, A reminder that sometimes character fates can change overnight because production has been disrupted. Emily Wickersham, Ellie Bishop. When Cote de Pablo left NCIS, many fans wondered if the series could ever replace Ziva David's energy and intensity. Enter Emily Wickersham as Eleanor Ellie Bishop in Season 11. A former NSA analyst turned NCIS special agent, Bishop was analytical, socially awkward at times, but also fiercely dedicated. Over the years, she carved out her own identity within the team. Her bond with Gibbs, her evolving friendships with McGee and Torres, and her eventual embrace of fieldwork helped her transition from the new kid to a vital part of the NCIS family. That's why her departure in the Season 18 finale blindsided fans. Bishop wasn't written off with death or disaster. She staged her own fall from grace, deliberately tarnishing her record to go undercover on a classified mission. It was the kind of exit that felt temporary, as though Bishop might return triumphantly in a later season. But off-screen, the story was different. Shortly after the finale aired, Emily Wickersham took to Instagram to confirm she was truly leaving the series. In a heartfelt message, she thanked the cast, crew, and fans for what she described as an epic ride, adding that she would hang this hat and jacket up with gratitude. Unlike some of her predecessors, Wickersham didn't cite behind-the-scenes drama or contract disputes as the reason for leaving. Instead, the suggestion in her farewell was something much more personal. She confessed that the television business can be finicky and weird, and there is not much consistency. A lot of fans took that to mean she was ready for a new chapter beyond NCIS. They were right. Almost immediately after her exit, Wickersham stopped working to focus instead on her family. In December 2021, she welcomed her first child, a boy, with actor James Badge Dale. Bishop's exit left a conspicuous gap in NCIS. She spent 8 seasons taking her character from the outsider to a trusted confidant, and many ardent supporters wanted her in the future of the show. This undercover exit leaves the door slightly ajar, but for now, the story is not complete. Emily Wickersham's NCIS stint showcased the journey of a character who overcame all doubt and negatives to endear herself to the tight-knit group of agents. Bitter and sweet was her departure announcement for fans, but her legacy still lives on. Ellie Bishop showed that in a long-running show like NCIS, new characters can still touch hearts and come to define an era. Mark Harmon, Leroy Jethro Gibbs. For nearly 2 decades, NCIS revolved around one man, Leroy Jethro Gibbs. With his gravelly voice, stern leadership, and famous rules, Gibbs wasn't just the team's backbone, he was the series itself. Mark Harmon's performance made Gibbs one of television's most iconic characters, a figure both feared and loved, whose quiet wisdom balanced perfectly with his unyielding intensity. Fans who had been there from the beginning couldn't imagine NCIS without him. So when Harmon left after 18 seasons, it felt like the end of an era. The question was, why did he walk away after carrying the show for so long? On screen, Gibbs's departure was handled with surprising restraint. In Season 19, after surviving a near-death explosion and spending time reflecting on his choices, Gibbs chose not to return to Washington. Instead, he stayed in Alaska, drawn to the peace he could no longer find in his old life. It was a subdued, almost poetic farewell. Not a shocking death, not a dramatic showdown, but a man quietly choosing a new path. For a character who had sacrificed everything for duty, it felt fitting. Behind the curtains, Harmon always maintained the realization that nothing lasts forever. At 70 years old, the physical demands of episodes with severe action, chasing suspects, fighting, and surviving the rigors of filming schedules were becoming more taxing on Harmon, even with stunt doubles. Apart from the demanding acting responsibilities, Harmon was a heavily burdened executive producing NCIS and its spin-offs, which meant he was already drowning in work. Therefore, I feel he must have gone not in conflict, but in sheer exhaustion and an urge to find some balance after spending 18 years in this role. Stephen Binder, the showrunner, hinted at the fact that Gibbs's story is not completely over. In comments after Harmon departed, he reassured the audience that, as longtime viewers may have noticed over the years, never count Leroy Jethro Gibbs out. This has led to speculation that there was a possibility of a cameo or special story arc for Harmon. That would be even more plausible considering the character's ties to so many former team members. Mark Harmon left among the major farewells in the history of NCIS, but as with some of the more erratic departures from the show, his was not the same. He went with a kind of respect, closure, and dignity. The question of the disappearance of Gibbs was moot. He was given peace. For the fans, there is the happy imagining that somewhere in the quietness of Alaska, Gibbs is still alive, fishing, building boats, and finally obtaining the serenity for which he spent a lifetime in search. Maria Bello, Jack Sloane. When Maria Bello joined NCIS in Season 15 as forensic psychologist Jacqueline Jack Sloane, she instantly brought a different kind of energy to the show. Sloane wasn't an agent with a badge and gun. She was a thinker, someone who dissected the psychological motives behind crime. Her presence offered the team a fresh perspective, and her no-nonsense confidence made her stand out in a squad that had already seen countless faces come and go. Fans quickly connected with her, not only for her professional expertise, but also for the subtle chemistry that developed between her and Gibbs. Over 3 seasons, that slow-burning bond between Sloane and Gibbs became one of NCIS's most intriguing subplots. They were two people scarred by life but softened by each other's company. Maria Bello herself admitted that exploring that relationship on screen was one of the most rewarding parts of her time on the series. She described their connection as fun, layered, and full of possibilities. For many viewers, Sloane represented the chance to see Gibbs open up emotionally in a way he rarely had before. However, even though her character had promise, Bello's time on the show was never intended to be permanent. From the outset, she had signed a 3-year contract, and when Season 18 came around, she decided against renewing it. Unlike some of the more tumultuous exits in the show's history, this decision was simple for her. She wanted to move on to other projects and new challenges. Bello's departure from the show was handled delicately. In the episode entitled True Believer, Special Agents Sloane and Gibbs traveled to Afghanistan to save kidnapped girls. After the conclusion of this mission, Sloane allowed herself to realize that her path had diverged from NCIS. She opted to stay behind in Afghanistan, to partake in humanitarian missions to help rebuild the lives of those whose lives had been shattered by violence. Now, that was a truly noble send-off fitting her caring disposition, and one that furnished her with a purpose in life outside the walls of the NCIS headquarters. The actress Bello wrote a very touching and emotional note on Instagram, wherein she appreciated the NCIS cast and crew for being the kindest, most generous group of people she had worked with. She expressed her thanks for not leaving Sloane's journey hanging, but giving it a proper ending. For fans, Jack Sloane has not really been there for a long time, but there is no denying her impact. It was she who challenged Gibbs, softened him, and brought humanity into the picture. Maria Bello moved on by her own wishes, but made sure her character left with dignity, strength, and unfinished possibilities. This might feel like closure, but the next chapter opened the door to chaos. Cote de Pablo, Ziva David. When Sasha Alexander's Kate Todd was slayed off, NCIS faced a daunting challenge: how to fill the void left by one of the show's founding characters. The answer came in Season 3, with the introduction of Cote de Pablo as Ziva David, a former Mossad officer whose sharp skills, steely confidence, and unique background instantly made her stand out. Ziva wasn't just a replacement. She quickly became a fan favorite, adding both grit and depth to the team. Her complex relationship with Gibbs, her evolving trust with McGee, and, of course, her undeniable chemistry with Tony DiNozzo gave NCIS some of its most memorable arcs. That's why her departure in Season 11 blindsided everyone. Fans were devastated to learn that Ziva had been written out, and what made the blow even harder was how sudden and mysterious it all felt. There was no heroic farewell, no extended goodbye, just an abrupt exit that left viewers and even cast members stunned. Veteran actor David McCallum later admitted, "I don't understand how a leading lady in a show that's worldwide suddenly vanishes days before we start production." Initially, Cote de Pablo did not explain, except for personal reasons, which led to speculations that there had been some behind-the-scenes conflict. 3 years later, she would share more on the departure, saying that she was unhappy with the direction of the scripts. She said she didn't feel like Ziva was being given the respect the character deserved, that she was losing valuable storylines, in her opinion, from the character's charm. "I didn't think it was fair," she reflected further down the line. Her departure injected abundant fan theories, and the whole idea of Ziva being later pronounced dead by the writers in an off-screen event only contributed to the frustration. However, the writers had left some breadcrumbs, saying perhaps all was not as it seemed. Sure enough, years later, Ziva reappeared in a blaze of glory for a short story arc, and revealed that she faked her death. Those short-lived appearances finished her character's arc, but reignited the horde of fan fantasies about the reunion with Tony. Cote de Pablo has made it a point to underscore that some of the things she said about the writing were misrepresented. In any case, she has remained the picture of diplomacy regarding her years on NCIS. Yet, her exit from the show remains one of the most talked-about controversies in NCIS history. For fans, Ziva David wasn't just another character, she was one of the most dynamic forces NCIS ever had. Even now, her story continues to spark debates among fans who argue whether her departure was handled the right way. Some believe the mystery only added to Ziva's legendary status, while others feel she deserved a more powerful send-off. And there you have it, the real reasons why 10 actors left NCIS. Each story had its own twists, surprises, and tough choices. Which exit shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more behind-the-scenes stories, and ring the bell so you never miss a video. And if you're ready for more, click the next video on your screen. It's one you won't want to miss.